thought that I was not going to have a place to see my presentation, so now I'm okay. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It's a great honor. I'm going to talk about something that is very important for investment. Something that, to be fair, we have been working together with many people, in particular with members of the House and members of the Senate of Chile, and we have some senators here today with me that have been also a very important part of what I'm going to show you. Okay? So the plan for the presentation is, first I'm going to give you a diagnostic about what is the problem that we have, because we have a problem. So this is the starting point of the presentation. Then I'm going to talk about how we address this problem with this law. And then I'm going to try to give you an idea about what is going to be the impact, the expected impact of this important change. To start with, I think it's relevant to say that there is a lot of interest to invest in Chile. Okay? There are many ways to measure this, but one very useful way is to see the amount of investment that is entering to the environmental assessment process. Okay? And this is what you can see in this picture. Basically, last year was the year with the highest amount of money entering to the environmental assessment process, about 80 billion. Okay? So there is interest to invest Chile. The problem that we have is taking too long to get the approval. Okay? We have, as you may know, we have two stages. Okay? One stage is the environmental assessment process. Okay? The other stage is all the other permits. And we call all these other permits, we name them sectoral permits. Okay? But there are many things there. I mean, health is like 1/4 of those permits. What is the problem that we have here? Basically, we don't have a system. Okay? We have about 400 permits, all of them with a rationality. I mean, they try to prevent a particular risk, which is fine. Okay? But the way that we are doing this is not efficient at all. Okay? And one of the problems that we have that you can see in that picture is that I just picked some of them, but in some of these permits is taking 8, 7, 6 times what is in the law. Okay? So it's taking too long. This is implying uncertainty, lack of organization. We don't have centralized information. So there are many things because we never thought this as a system. Okay? So just to give you an idea about how relevant are sectoral permits, here I have an example of a big mining project. Okay? In a big mining project, more or less, 1/3 of the time that is taken for that project is coming from the environmental assessment process stage, and 2/3 is coming from sectoral permits. So here, clearly, we have an opportunity because nobody thought about the system of sectoral permits, and at the same time, is responsible for a big chunk of the problem. So we have the opportunity to have to perform a drastic reform, okay, in something that, since nobody thought about that, there is a lot to gain in that possibility. Okay? So first is important in terms of the time. It's also important because for small projects, they do not go through the environmental assessment process. So if you want to expand, for example, a restaurant, the only permits that you have to face are the sectoral permits. Okay? So it's also quite relevant for the vast majority of people that is trying to make a business in Chile, not just for big investments. Okay? So what is our paradigm here, or what is our approach to this problem? Okay? We are convinced that it's possible to reduce, in a big way, reduce the time that is taking these sectoral permits without lowering the standard. Okay? This is our view. Okay? So I'm going to try to convince you during this presentation how we do this, how we're going to reduce the time by a big way, okay, without reducing the standard. We think that this is politically relevant because we think society doesn't want to reduce the standard. I mean, in Chile, as you know, when we have an earthquake and you are in a big building, you think that the building is going to be fine. Okay? And this is part of the regulatory standard. Or when you go for a restaurant and you think that after going to the restaurant, you're not going to go to the clinic. Okay? So basically, standards are, or these permits are relevant, okay? But they are designed in a way that is totally inefficient. Okay? Just to give you an idea about how ambitious is this law, okay? We have 150 articles, but more important than that, we are amending, we are changing 46 sectoral laws. Okay? The health, the law about the water, and so on. So there are important laws that we must to change in order to get the outcome that we want in this process. And this was signed by 16 ministers, because there are like 40 public institutions that are involved in this process. So it's a massive change to get the outcome that we want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what this law does, okay, at 3 levels. Okay? One is the permit, okay, how we manage the way to short the time for getting a specific permit. Then I'm going to tell you something about the system, how we organize in a different way the path that you have to go through, go through in this system, and finally some institutional change that we make in order to get the outcome that we are looking for. Okay? So imagine this specific permits. Okay? This is important, for example, when I'm going to give you an example later, but in Jimal Aguirre, this transmission line, okay, that transmission line cross many small, I'm not going to say river, canales, I don't know how to say that, okay, but channels, yeah, very small ones, okay, and you need to change it a little bit, okay, and in the case of Jimal Aguirre, they have to change it in about 700 times, okay. That permit depends on the Ministry of Public Works. Okay? So basically, the problem that we have is we have a regulatory time and we have an effective time. And in the picture, this is more optimistic than in reality, because the fraction of the effective time could be much larger than the one that is in the picture. But it is enough to illustrate the problem. So what we do in this case? Okay? We do many things. First, we have an admissibility review. Basically, what we have there is that in many cases in Chile, you can have a rejection of a permit 1 year later because you didn't bring a paper that was important. Okay? This is something that is not going to happen anymore, because basically you're going to have few days to submit all the papers that you have to submit. So after that, you're just you're gonna be evaluated, but by the main issue that you're facing, not by any formal issue or something like that. Second, and this is very important, in many permits, you need to get information from another institution, and sometimes the problem is because those institutions do not send you the information on time. Okay? Well, basically, what we're going to have in those cases is that this is going to be subject to administrative silence, which means that if the time is complete, you could assume that was an affirmative answer. Okay, this is very important. For example, in maritime concessions, in which case you have to ask for 10 reports from different organizations, from different state organizations, that in reality takes too long. And finally, we're going to regulate all the iterations that exist. We're going to eliminate many iterations, and by doing that, we're going to allow to reduce the time. More important than that, or as important as the other part, we're going to have civil servants incentives in many different ways to be sure that everybody understands that it's important to achieve or to meet the time that is in the law. We're going to have, for about half of all these 400 permits, we're going to have positive administrative silence, which means that if, for example, any permit should take, I don't know, 45 days, if you have those 45 days, you as a leader of the project, you're going to have the right to print a certificate that is going to have the same legal value than the authorization. And this is going to be true for about half of the permits. So just by that measure, basically, we can say that we're solving half of the problem, okay? Just by that measure. Okay? And also, we're going to reduce the legal times. Okay? This is not as important as the previous things that I told you, because obviously, if today we are not meeting the time that is in the law, if you reduce the time that is in the law, this is not going to be a measure that is very effective, but still we are also reducing the time. So by combining all these measures, we hope that the specific time that is taking each permit is gonna be reduced. Okay? Now let's talk about the system, okay? Because this permit is just one permit. Okay? For big investments, you can have combination of these 400 permits. I don't know, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000 of permits that you have to ask. So it's not just important how to reduce the time for each of these permits, but also you have to think this in a systemic way. So one thing that is very important, maybe the most important measure that we have in this law, is that we are going to have this affidavit in the case of low-risk cases, which means that in a steady state, about 90 of these 400 permits are going to have this affidavit in low-risk cases, which basically says that we are not changing the standard, okay, but we are changing who certificate that you are meeting that standard. Okay? And in this case in particular, it's going to be the leader of the project who is going to certificate that is meeting the standard. Obviously, after that, there's going to be fiscalization, as is also the case when you have an authorization from a public servant. Okay? It's exactly the same. Okay? And we're going to have this in about, as I said, 92 permits in a steady state. Okay? This is going to be relevant not just for the firm that is using this possibility, but it's also relevant because we have a systemic problem. And the systemic problem is that we have, these 40 state institutions that are in charge of these sectoral permits are collapsed nowadays, okay? Because they are evaluating too many permits that are not relevant in terms of the risk that they have to prevent. So by doing this, you're going to reduce the number of papers that they have to evaluate, and by doing that, they are going to have enough time to focus their attention on the permits that are really relevant. Okay? So this is also a systemic effect. Okay? Even more important than that, and this is a change that we do in the Senate. Here we have Senator Edwards and Saavedra, who participated in this process in the Committee of the Economy and in the Senate. If you see today, one of the problems that we have is that for many different reasons, these institutions, okay, force the private sector and also the public sector, when they have a project, to follow a sequential process. Okay? And there is no reason for that sequentiality, because basically in the sectoral permits framework, each permit could be evaluated by its own, basically. You don't need to consider other permits, basically. So there is no reason to have this sequentiality. But for historical reasons, for many reasons that I cannot explain, in practice, the state institutions are asking for this sequentiality. So basically what we do in the law is that we prohibit this. Okay? This is explicit in the law. We said that the leader of a project is going to have the right to go through this process in a parallel way. Okay? How you're going to use this in practice is going to depend on your project, because sometimes for the engineering process, you need to do some of this process in a sequential way. Okay? But you're going to be free to design what is the optimal path that you want to have in this process. Just imagine, to illustrate the effect of this measure, imagine that you have to face 2 permits, each of them 6 months, and you have to go through them in a sequential way. This is 1 year. If you could do this in a parallel way, this is 6 months. Okay? And I really like this measure because this is a paradigmatic example of how you can reduce time without reducing the standard, because the standard of each of these permits is not changing at all. Okay? The only thing that is changing is the way that you go through the system. Okay? Something that is also relevant is that in the law, we define that there is going to be the possibility to qualify a specific project as a strategic one, and in that case, the total time for all those permits is going to be half of what is in the law. Okay? Imagine many projects regarding to energy, in particular green energy. We're going to be able to qualify them as a strategic, and then this is going to be much faster in those cases. There are going to be some ministers that are going to be in charge of this, including the Minister of Finance, obviously. And finally, and this is something that we also include in maybe one of the main changes that we include in the Senate, we have a stable regulatory environment. Let me explain how this is going to work. Basically, in general, what you have in practice is that you first go through the environmental assessment process, and then you start the sectoral permit part. Okay? So imagine that it takes 2 years in the environmental assessment process. Okay? So you start a project, and then in year 3 or 4, you start you ask a specific sectoral permit. But I don't know, in year 2 or in year 3, there was a big change in the standard of that permit. What this law is saying is that you're gonna have the right, okay, to ask to be evaluated by the standard that was effective at the beginning of the environmental assessment process. Okay? So basically, when you start the environmental assessment process, you know what is going to be the standard during all your evaluation. Okay? This is a huge change. This is not going to change the time, I think so, not in a big way, but it's going to give you more certainty, and maybe this is going to have effect in having more investment. I insist, not because of the time, but because of how you reduce the risk that any project can face. Okay? And finally, some institutional changes that are also relevant. Right now, when you go through this sectoral permits process, you have to talk with many institutions, okay? And this is not organized at all, okay? And you have a lot of people in your companies working on this. Okay? Our idea is that you after this law, you take those people to another part of the firm to be as creative as previously, but using their intelligence in productive things, not in what is the strategy to face this regulatory process. Okay? And one thing that we're going to do, and to be honest, this is something that this is the part that was also developed by the previous administration. We are using something that they developed. We are going to have this one-stop place where you're gonna submit all your permits, okay, all these 400 or so permits. The system is going to be interoperable. I don't know how to say that, but it's going to be linked. Okay. Okay, perfect. So basically, you're going to be able to follow what is the current status for each of these hundreds of permits that you submit. Okay? This is going to be relevant for you, for transparency, but it's also relevant for the state, because today, when we try to do better this, we don't have the information in real time. Okay? And this is a huge problem to have a better management from the state to face the problem that we're trying to address. Okay? And at the same time, this is also useful to push for more standardization. One of the problems that we have right now is there is a lot of heterogeneity. In one region, with the same project, you can face you could be asked for 3 aspects of the project, and in another region 4 or 5 with different criteria. This is something that is not that easy to control because the state is a big organization, a complex organization. But when you standardize the process, and when you use one page, one web page where everybody is gonna go through this process, this is gonna be useful to standardize, to push for more standardization. Okay? We're going to have public performance reports for all of these sector institution. This is going to be also useful for media. Okay? Media now is going to be able to see what is the problem. Okay? Because even though this, I hope this is going to be an important change, it's not going to work perfect. Okay? And it is important to have mechanisms to push, to put the right incentives such that the institutions that are not doing well, they improve the performance in the future. So the role of the media could be also relevant here. And finally, we're going to have a new institution. We're going to have an office within the Ministry of Economy who's going to be in charge of all this process. This is relevant because right now we have, let's say, 40 other institutions whose role is try to reduce the risk. Okay? Obviously, if they try to reduce the risk, they do not care about the time of the investment, the timing of the investment. So you need a counterpart. You need at least one institution who is going to think in the opposite way, trying to optimize the process. This is what is going to be in the Ministry of Economy, and this is going to be an important complement to the agency that is being created by the Ministry of Finance, that is going to be in charge of improving the regulatory system in general in Chile. So I think we're going to be a good partner between these 2 institutions. Okay? And finally, there is going to be a regulatory improvement process, so meaning every year, this office that is going to be within the Ministry of Economy is going to be in charge of having a dialogue with all these 40 institutions to be sure that they are improving their process, checking what is not working and how we can improve them and so on. So basically, when you have, as I said before, when you have a big change like this, you know that the outcome is not going to be perfect. What is important is that within the law, within the system that we are creating, there is a process to have a permanent improvement. Let me finish by giving you an example. This Quimallo Aguirre project. Quimallo Aguirre is very important for different reasons to get, well, it's a transmission line that is 1,300 kilometers. Okay? As it crosses many municipalities, so it is, to be transparent, it is a mess, the evaluation process of that. That's why I'm bringing this project. But at the same time, it's so important for us. It is important because it's going to reduce the cost of the energy. It's going to reduce the carbon footprint of the country. It's going to give us more stability. So it's so important. Okay? We hope as a government that the environmental assessment process is going to be end during our administration, and we hope to finish this project pretty soon, such that they can face this new sectoral permits institutional system when they start that process. Okay? So let me give you some example how this new law is gonna speed up the process. First, there's gonna be many affidavits, okay, for the DOM, DGA, health. So, for example, the Desvío Menor de Cauce, okay, that I told you at the beginning of the presentation. As I said, they have 700. Okay? Those 700 permits now they are going to be affidavits. Okay? So this is going to be a huge change for them. Okay? Then they're going to be able to use the parallel processing. For sure, they are going to be defined as a strategic project, meaning they're going to have half of the time for each of these permits. There are going to be many management incentives that are going to be operating by 2026, and also they are going to be able to use the administrative silence, the positive administrative silence in many cases. So we think that this is not just relevant for a small project. So, for example, a restaurant, if you want to expand a restaurant, now it's taking 8 months. With the implementation of this project, it's going to take 2 months. It's a huge change for many people. Okay? And let me finish by saying that when we started the idea of this law by the end of 2022, many people told us, not many, but some people, okay, told us that was not necessary, okay, because they say this is just a problem of management, okay, and we gave them two answers to that. First, we have seen different governments, okay, during the last 15 years, all of them, I'm pretty sure, doing their best effort to reduce this problem, and the problem is being worse. Okay? So management is not enough. Okay? And second, management is not democratic at all, because we can work together with big projects and trying to help them in being faster. Okay? But who is going to help the people who want to expand the restaurant? It's impossible that we receive them in a lobby meeting. Okay? So it is, to have a reform such that the state works well in an efficient way is also relevant from a democratic point of view. The impact of this is that this is the calculation that we have, or the estimation that we have before all the changes that we made in the Senate. So I think it is going to be much better than this, but the times are going to be reduced by at least between 30 and 70%, depending on the project. There is an estimation in this commission that was created by Ministry Marcel, the Marfan Commission, that can add 2.4% over 10 years in growth. This is going to be useful for transparency, traceability, legal certainty, reduction, and the last point is very important. Having a barrier of permitting in the way that we have right now is also reducing competition. Okay? So this is also going to improve the competition in our country. So I hope that we're going to approve this in 2, 3, 4 weeks. We're pretty close to and then such that we can spend the last part of our government in implementing this. That is not that easy, and we have worked with the 40 institutions that are involved in this during all this year. So we think that we're in the best position to work together with them as a team to implement this law as we expect. Thank you very much.